Farmers in California, city dwellers in coastal cities, families in small towns throughout the South and Midwest. Everyone is dealing with different effects from climate change, whether it's unusual snowfall, longer summers, deeper droughts, more destructive wildfires, or stronger storms. Things are getting unpredictable. At the root of these climate changes is global warming, caused mainly by rising levels of gases in the atmosphere, particularly carbon dioxide, or CO2. These greenhouse gases act like a heat-trapping blanket, driving the Earth's temperature up and overwhelming its natural heat-regulating systems like oceans, soils, and forests. The United States and China are responsible for the largest percentages of the world's CO2 emissions, mostly from burning fossil fuels like coal and oil for energy, industrial production, and transportation. But everything from the cars we drive to the transportation and packaging of our food adds to the problem. Most researchers expect the effects of climate change to get stronger over the next 10 to 20 years. A rapidly changing and unpredictable climate has financial costs, like higher insurance rates and disaster relief. But there are also health problems, like asthma and heat-related illnesses, to consider. Our food sources will be affected, and so will the oceans, forests, and wildlife areas. Climate change is even a national security concern. When people talk about climate change, it's clear they're concerned about things we all hold dear: our health, our children, our homes and communities, our environment, our livelihoods, even our personal safety. But to deal with it will require actions that also pose risks to our freedom, our livelihoods, and our communities. There is a lot of agreement about the basic science of climate change. What's not so clear and what we have to decide is what we're willing to do and what we're willing to risk as individuals, communities, and a nation in order to take action. We'll be deliberating about 3 options for dealing with climate change. These options weren't posed by political parties or experts. They were developed by talking to people throughout the country about the risks from climate change they fear most, and the actions that seem likely to protect what they hold most valuable. As we decide how to address the problems, we also need to consider the drawbacks and trade-offs of our approaches to make sure we can live with the consequences. So, let's look at our options. Option 1. Sharply reduce carbon emissions. This option says we need to take aggressive action to reduce our energy consumption and change climate-changing behaviors. If we don't move swiftly to tackle the problem at its source, we risk catastrophic effects that we and future generations may not be able to adapt to. What if we created a national low-emissions standard that required states to get a certain percentage of their energy from renewable sources? That would reduce emissions, but low-carbon energy sources, especially nuclear, have their own downsides. Or we could levy a carbon fee on fossil fuel providers that reflects the true costs of carbon fuels. But these costs will likely be passed on to consumers, affecting the basics, like food and gas prices. That would be particularly hard on poor people. Requiring the use of electric vehicles would address one of the major sources of carbon emissions. We could also divert some highway funds to pay for bike lanes and to help develop pedestrian-friendly neighborhoods. But these are long-term changes that will take years to implement, so we wouldn't see reductions in carbon emissions for quite a while. The downside to all these actions is that they limit our personal choices and freedom, and some people, communities, and businesses would be more affected by the changes than others. Could we live with that? Option 2. Prepare and protect communities. This view focuses on protecting and preparing communities and businesses for the most likely effects of climate change by planning ahead and strengthening our resilience to the impacts we face. So, for example, we could change land use regulations, zoning, building codes, and insurance rules to keep people from living and building in areas most at risk to climate change hazards, and get those currently living in vulnerable places to move. But these changes will infringe on property rights and impose large economic burdens on some property owners while enhancing the property values of others. Communities could also adapt to rising sea levels by investing in more resilient buildings and infrastructure in coastal areas. But this would change the landscape in many communities and add huge costs to construction. We might prepare for climate change disasters by increasing access to cooling centers, emergency food, housing, and healthcare treatment so that those affected can cope with prolonged heat stress, hunger, illness, or even homelessness. But the task might be too great for charities, social services, and local organizations. The actions in this approach do little to slow climate change, so it means accepting greater environmental damage, and some people and communities will need to make bigger changes and sacrifices than others. Can we accept that? Option 3, accelerate innovation. This option says people have always adapted to changing conditions and that we should allow that to happen now, encouraging people's natural problem-solving instincts to address this shared problem. In this view, we should invest in rapid innovation to develop new fuel sources, new ways of generating power, new ways to influence Earth's climate, and even new societal arrangements. For example, the government could offer incentives for companies to create low-carbon technologies for energy storage, water reclamation, recycling of mining waste, and sustainable agriculture. But this would put the government in a position of choosing winners and losers for projects and would interfere with the private sector. We could also accelerate research and development on scientific methods for offsetting the effects of high CO2 levels in the atmosphere. This is called geoengineering, but this would be new and untested technology that could have unintended consequences like damaging Earth's protective ozone layer, causing weather disruptions, or something else we can't anticipate. What if we use data from technologies like smart electric meters in homes and GPS-enabled communication systems in cars, combined with peer pressure and social networking to motivate people to reduce their energy use? But this could raise concerns about privacy and data security and would make us all subject to peer and public pressure. Some of these new technologies will undoubtedly fail, and the risk in all these actions is not making progress quickly enough to avert the worst climate change impacts. And there may be significant unintended consequences for the environment, human health, the economy, and the balance of our social and economic systems. Can we live with those risks? These three options are the starting point for our conversation. Each protects certain things we hold valuable but leaves others at risk. And in order to take action on a problem as huge as climate change, we need a way forward that everyone is willing to contribute to. We've got some hard choices to make, so let's get talking.